My name is Leigh Waverly. I am 32 years old and I work as a property appraiser for a small firm in Tucson, Arizona. I spend my days walking through other people's houses, measuring rooms, reading foundations, writing numbers that determine what something is actually worth versus what someone wishes it were worth. I am good at seeing the difference. Last June I attended my younger sister Cassie's wedding at the Saguaro Grande Estate, a venue east of Tucson that books for $12,000 on a Saturday in June. The flowers alone cost more than my monthly rent. I wore a pale green dress I had owned for 3 years and low heels that were starting to separate at the left sole. I drove 40 minutes from my apartment in a 2017 Civic with a cracked dashboard and a check engine light I had been ignoring since March. I almost didn't go. I want to be honest about that. But I went. I parked in the far lot, walked to the entrance alone and found my seat near the back left. The seat my mother had assigned me when she mailed the seating chart, which told me everything I needed to know about where I stood. I was smoothing the front of my dress when I heard her voice behind me, low and sharp, talking to my Aunt Renata. "Look at what she's wearing," my mother said. I told her not to come. I genuinely told her it would be better if she stayed home. But she never listens. I heard it. Half the row heard it. The woman beside me, a stranger in a yellow fascinator, glanced sideways and then very deliberately looked away. I didn't turn around. I fixed my eyes on the altar arrangements, white dahlias, I noted, which ran about $80 a bunch at a florist, and I breathed slowly through my nose and I reminded myself why I came. I came because Cassie asked me to. Whatever else was true, my sister had called me herself 2 weeks before the wedding and said, "Leigh, please come. It won't feel right without you." I came for that. Not for my mother. Never for my mother. The ceremony began. I watched my sister walk down the aisle on my mother's arm. My father has been gone since I was 19, and Cassie was radiant in the way brides are radiant, lit from somewhere internal, and I felt the uncomplicated love I have always had for her underneath all the complicated everything else. The groom's name was Patrick Osei. He was steady and warm and he looked at my sister the way people look at things they cannot believe they get to keep. His father was sitting in the front row. I did not know his name yet. I only knew, looking at the back of his head, that he was a tall man with close-cropped white hair and very straight posture. He held his program with both hands. He did not look around. I would learn his name later. By then the room would already be different. I need to tell you about my mother and me because nothing that happened at that wedding makes sense without it. My mother's name is Sandra Waverly. She is 58 years old and she has lived her entire life in Maricopa County. She is not a cruel woman in the cinematic sense. She does not yell, she does not hit, she does not make scenes in public. What she does is quieter and more efficient than that. She has 2 daughters. Cassie is the one she chose. I am the one she kept. I understood this at 11 years old the first time I saw it clearly. Cassie was 7. She had a dance recital, her 3rd that year at the Mesquite Arts Center on Brown Road in Mesa. And my mother had bought her a costume that cost $120, which in our house at that time was not a small number. My father was working double shifts at a distribution warehouse. Money was a calculation we made at every meal. The week of the recital, I needed new lab supplies for a 7th grade science project. The list came to $38. I showed my mother the list at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "Leigh, you're smart. You'll figure something out." I borrowed the $38 from my school's supply closet, one item at a time over 3 days, returning what I could and absorbing the rest. I got an A. I told no one. That was the year I began to understand what I now call visible investment logic. The belief held unconsciously by certain parents that resources should flow toward the child who produces visible, photographable results. Cassie danced. Cassie sparkled. Cassie's achievements existed in rooms full of people. Mine existed in spreadsheets and lab reports and quiet competence that didn't photograph well. My mother was not withholding from me out of malice. She was investing where she could see the return. I have spent years understanding this. It does not hurt less for being understood. When I was 16, my grandfather on my father's side passed away and left me a small inheritance, $4,200, placed in an account in my name at a Desert Financial branch in Tempe. He had done it intentionally and privately. My father told me later that Grandpa Walt had said, "That girl works. Make sure she has something." I had plans for it. Not large plans. I wanted a used laptop, Mine had a broken hinge held together with electrical tape. And to start saving for whatever came after high school, which I already understood would be funded entirely by myself. I never touched the account. My mother found the statement in my room. I was at school. When I came home, she was sitting at the kitchen table with the paper in front of her and her hands folded and an expression of patient suffering that I had learned to dread. Cassie needs a new competition package, she said. The regional qualifier is in February. The fees and the costume and the travel come to $3,800. I stood in the doorway with my backpack still on. Mom, I said. That's my money. It's the family's money right now, she said. When Cassie wins regionals, the scholarship opportunities are real. This is an investment in all of us. Grandpa Walt left it to me. Grandpa Walt left it because he loved you, she said. And because he loved you, he would want you to help your sister. I remember the way the kitchen smelled that afternoon, like the pot roast she had started in the slow cooker, paprika and onion, something that was supposed to feel like home. I remember standing in that smell and feeling the floor shift under me, not physically but in the way that happens when you realize the thing you thought was yours has always been negotiable. I didn't fight her. I was 16. I transferred $3,800. Cassie placed third at regionals. There was no scholarship. My mother said, "We'll get it next time." There was no next time. Cassie quit dance the following year to focus on social life and boys, which she was allowed to do because she was Cassie, and because my mother's visible investment logic always forgave its favorite subjects. I paid for my own community college with 2 part-time jobs and a Pell Grant. I transferred to the University of Arizona on a partial merit scholarship. I got my appraiser's license at 25 and my certified general certification at 28. I bought my used Civic at 29 with money I had saved over 18 months. I did all of this without a single dollar from my mother. She has never mentioned this. I have never asked her to. What I have done over the past 3 years is say no. Quietly, consistently, without drama. When she called asking me to cover Cassie's bridal shower venue, $400, I said I couldn't. When she asked me to pay for alterations to Cassie's wedding dress, $260, I said I couldn't. When she called in March and said, "Leigh, the wedding gift from our side of the family should be substantial, given what the Osays are contributing," I said I would give what I could afford. I gave Cassie and Patrick a food processor and a card with $200 in it. It was what I could afford. It was the most honest thing I had ever given anyone. My mother called it embarrassing. I said, "Okay." The reception was held in a pavilion behind the main building, strung with Edison lights over round tables set with cream linens. The evening air in Tucson in June carries heat differently than daytime heat. It sits rather than presses, and it smelled that night of warm stone and the jasmine planted along the venue's south wall. I found my table. Seat 9. Far right near the service entrance. I sat down, introduced myself to the couple beside me, friends of Patrick's from graduate school, a woman named Sonia and her husband Teo, who were both immediately warm and easy, and I ordered a glass of house Cabernet and told myself I would stay 2 hours and then leave gracefully. My mother appeared at my table 20 minutes into the cocktail hour. She was wearing a silk blouse I recognized from Nordstrom's website. I had looked it up once out of a specific kind of tired curiosity, and it retailed at $240. She did not sit down. "I need you to help clear the gift table later," she said. "Renata's back is bad and I'll be in photos." "Sure," I said. She looked at my dress. A long look. The kind that does the work without words. "You should have let me buy you something," she said. I offered. She had not offered. Not once. I had the text history to prove it, though I was not going to say so at my sister's wedding. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. She left. Sonia beside me said nothing. But she refilled my wine glass from the bottle on the table, and that was its own kind of kindness. The father of the groom was named Dr. Kofi Osei. I learned this from the program. He was a cardiologist retired now from the Cleveland Clinic. He and Patrick's mother Adwoa had moved to Scottsdale 3 years prior. He was 67 years old. He had the posture of a man who had spent decades standing at operating tables and had never quite stopped standing that way. He found me during the dinner between the salad course and the entree. He walked directly to my table, which surprised me, and he stood at the empty chair beside me and said, "Excuse me. Are you Leigh Waverly?" I said yes. He sat down. He placed both hands on the table and he looked at me steadily and he said, "I have been trying to figure out where I know your face from since the ceremony began." I had no idea what he meant. "I don't think we've met," I said. "3 years ago," he said. "January. St. Mary's Hospital in Tucson." He paused. "You were there with my wife." The room around me kept moving. Forks against plates, the band warming up, someone's child laughing somewhere. But I went very still. "I will tell you what happened in January 3 years before that wedding because Dr. Osei told it to the table himself and because it is the truest thing I know about why I do the work I do. I was not working as a property appraiser that January. I was doing a favor. My college friend Dana had been admitted to St. Mary's for emergency surgery. An ectopic pregnancy, caught late, frightening. Dana had no family in Tucson. Her mother was flying in from Detroit and would not arrive until morning. She asked me to come sit with her. I came. I sat. In the hallway outside Dana's room, around 2 in the morning, I found a woman sitting on the floor against the wall with her knees pulled to her chest and her face in her hands. She was well-dressed, even in distress she was composed, but she was alone in a hospital hallway at 2 a.m. and something in her posture said she had been alone there for a long time. I sat down on the floor beside her. I didn't know her. I just sat. Her name was Adwo. Her husband, Dr. Kofi Osei, was in surgery. Sudden cardiac event. They had been at dinner. He had collapsed between the appetizer and the main course. She had ridden in the ambulance. She had been waiting in that hallway for 4 hours. I stayed with her. I got her water from the nurse's station. I sat on the floor and I listened while she talked about her husband, how they had met in Accra in 1984, how he had proposed on a Tuesday because he said he couldn't wait for the weekend, how he laughed at his own jokes before the punchline. I didn't know these people. None of it was my story. But she needed someone to hold it with her and I was there so I held it. Kofi Osei came out of surgery at 5:43 in the morning. I watched Adwoa stand up and I walked her to the recovery unit door and then I went to check on Dana and drove home at 7 a.m. and showered and went to work. I did not think of it again as a significant event. I had sat with a frightened woman in a hallway. Seemed like the minimum. I did not know her last name. I did not know her husband was a cardiologist. I did not know they had a son named Patrick who would one day marry my sister in a $12,000 venue in East Tucson. Dr. Kofi Osei told this story at the table. Not to the room, not yet. To me and to Sonia and Teo and to my mother who had materialized behind my chair at some point during the telling. His voice was quiet and deliberate, the voice of a man who chose every word. "My wife still talks about her," he said. "The woman who sat on the floor. She said she talked about me for 3 hours and this woman listened to every word as though she had nothing else in the world to do at 2 o'clock in the morning." He looked at me. "She gave my wife her phone number in case she needed anything. Pua still has it. She never called because she didn't want to impose. But she kept it." He reached into the breast pocket of his dinner jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. A hospital notepad sheet, small and slightly yellowed. My handwriting. My number. I looked at it for a long time. "That's her," he said, not to me but to my mother who was standing very still behind my chair. "That's the one who stayed." My mother said nothing. Adwoa Osei had come to stand behind her husband. She was elegant and small and she looked at me with an expression I will not try to describe because I don't have words sufficient for it. She took my hand in both of hers and held it. "Thank you," she said. "I have wanted to say that for 3 years. I am not a crier. I work in facts and figures and foundation reports." But my eyes went hot and I looked at the ceiling of the pavilion, Edison lights blurring slightly, and I breathed. Sonia beside me had her hand over her heart. Teo quietly filled my wine glass. My mother took a step back. Then another. By the time I looked over, she had moved away from the table entirely. I watched her cross the pavilion toward the bar. Her back was straight. Her chin was level. She was recalibrating. I knew that posture. I had been watching her recalibrate my entire life, absorbing new information and reordering the story she told about herself, effortlessly, the way water finds its level. She would tell this story differently by tomorrow. She would find a way to be adjacent to it. That was fine. I knew what had happened. Poa knew. Kofi knew. The notepad was still on the table. I didn't correct my mother's version. I didn't follow her to the bar. I turned back to the table and I picked up my wine glass and I said to Adwoa, "How is he doing?" "He looks well." Kofi laughed. "She's asking about my health at a wedding." "Old habit," I said. He laughed again. Adwoa sat down in the empty chair and we talked for an hour about Accra and Scottsdale and what it meant to build a life somewhere that wasn't where you started. It was the best conversation I had at any event in years. Some things shifted after that evening. Some things did not. Cassie texted me the morning after the wedding. "I didn't know about the hospital. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I wrote back. It didn't feel like a story. It just felt like a night. She sent a heart. We left it there. Adwoa Osei called me the following Tuesday. We talked for 35 minutes. She invited me to dinner at their home in Scottsdale the following month. I went. She made jollof rice and we ate on the back patio while the sun went down over the McDowell Mountains in colors I didn't have names for. My mother called me twice the week after the wedding. The first call was to tell me that the gift table clearing had gone fine and that Renata's back was feeling better. The second call was to tell me that she had been thinking about what happened at the reception, and that she was proud of me, and that she had always known I had a good heart. I listened to both messages in my car, parked outside the grocery store on Speedway Boulevard. I didn't call back. Not out of anger. Not to punish her. I have done enough of my living in reaction to my mother's assessments, shrinking when she looked at my dress, expanding slightly when she said something almost kind. I am 32 years old and I am tired of being calibrated by someone else's instrument. The $3,800 she took when I was 16 would be worth more than $8,000 now, adjusted. I did the calculation once the way appraisers do, current value, opportunity cost, time. I wrote the number down and then I folded the paper and put it in a drawer and left it there. I know what things are worth. That is my job and also increasingly my life philosophy. My mother's opinion of my dress is worth what she paid for it. Which is nothing. Which has always been nothing. It is August now. Tucson in August is a different city than Tucson in June. The monsoon season has arrived and the desert does this improbable thing where it blooms. The air in the evenings smells like wet creosote and petrichor and something I have never been able to name, but that smells exactly like relief. I am sitting on my apartment balcony with a cup of tea going cold beside me, watching the clouds build over the Rincon Mountains to the east. They are going purple at the base. There will be rain by 9. I have a report due tomorrow. A commercial property on Oracle Road, a small building with good bones and a lot of deferred maintenance. I know what it's worth. I'll write the number plainly. My phone is inside. The messages from my mother are still there, unanswered. They will keep. The clouds are moving now, and the first breath of cool air from the storm front reaches me on the balcony, and I put both hands around the cold cup of tea and close my eyes for a moment. I stayed. That is all I did. I sat on a hospital floor with a frightened woman and I stayed until morning. I didn't do it to be seen. I didn't do it to be repaid. I did it because she was alone and I was there and it was the minimum. Turns out the minimum was more than enough. If anyone has ever made you feel small for the quiet things you do, the things that don't photograph well, the 2 a.m. things, the floor of the hospital things, tell me about it in the comments. I want to know what you carry that nobody ever thinks to thank you for. I read every one.